We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including some offseason trade speculation. Could we see a significant blockbuster deal between the Vancouver Canucks and the New York Islanders? We're going to take a look at a recent article from Daily Faceoff suggesting that the two could be good trade partners, plus also some talk in the Montreal media that targeting Marco Rossi as a future number 2 center for the club might be a move we see in Montreal this season. We'll discuss that, what the price tag might be, and how that could work out. Evgeny Kuznetsov may be looking to make an NHL return. We have lots to discuss from the Stanley Cup playoffs, including Game 3 between Florida and Carolina, as well as Game 3 between Edmonton and Dallas today. Plus, the USA have ended a 92-year drought, winning gold at the World Championships. We'll discuss all that and some updates from the Memorial Cup coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. Let's start first with recapping the latest ongoings with the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers both picked up additional wins, getting a step closer to having a rematch from last year's Stanley Cup final. It's looking more and more likely that we just might be in for an Edmonton, Florida Part 2 this year. Right now, the Panthers have taken a commanding 3-0 series lead on the Carolina Hurricanes after picking up a 6-2 win in Game 3. It was 1-1 game after 2 periods of play, and then the Florida Panthers came out in the third period and just completely took over. The Canes kind of fell apart. They did pick up one more goal from Seth Jarvis, but it was kind of too little too late type of situation. They tried, changing the goalie. Freddie Anderson was out. Kochetkov was in. They've been without Walker and Chatfield on the back end as well. And just the Canes players are just not, they don't have that fight in them, it seems like, that the team like Florida has. And it's just quite honestly that simple. Their best players haven't really played like their best players, and we'll see where things go, but it feels like it's over. I mean, it's 3-0. It hasn't been close either. That's the worst of it. It's not like, I don't expect Rod Brindamore to be sitting there like he did a couple of years ago and say, we didn't get swept when they got swept. Like in that case, that series was a lot closer. A lot of closer games, where this is not even in the stratosphere whatsoever. So I kind of feel bad for the Canes. They always have a good regular season, and they are a good team, but they're just not ready to take that next leap. And it just goes to show you that I think that the teams in the Atlantic are actually that much stronger. Like, generally speaking, the Atlantic Division is so much stronger than the Metro right now, that the teams that are in the Atlantic that maybe lost out earlier in rounds 2 and 1 even might be closer to being cup contenders than some of the Metro teams that are winning and going into rounds 2 or 3. So, it goes to show you how things work out, but Florida still appears to be the class of the East right now. And of course, the Edmonton Oilers had another really good game today as well, picking up a 6-1 win over the Dallas Stars. The game was not as one-sided as that score will indicate. For the second time in the series, the Dallas Stars had a good period, and I mean that in the most sincere way. Like, the Dallas Stars haven't really been that great. They're lucky it's a 2-1 series and not 3-0. In the first game, the Stars had a good third period, and they stole that game after capitalizing on Edmonton's mistakes and getting 3 penalties and 3 power play goals. Dallas takes game 1, but really outside of that period, because the Oilers were a dominant team in the first 2 periods. But, it was the Stars hung around, took advantage of the third, had a good period, and won the game. Game 2 was a very dominant Edmonton win. Game 3, for the most part, I would say Edmonton dominated the first period and the third period, but the second period was very much Dallas. And that was probably their best period of the, or either the first or second best period of the series so far. But, to have 2 good periods in 3 games is just not good enough. Jake Ottinger has been pretty good. I don't really put this on him. But the Dallas players are not getting any kind of secondary scoring. That's 1 goal now in 2 games. Stuart Skinner has been really good. It's the first game he won in the playoffs. It wasn't a shutout. So good on him. McDavid started scoring today. He got 2 goals. He hadn't scored a lot, but getting a lot of assists, of course. Hyman had a couple goals. Obviously they were the Stars were without Rupe Hintz, which is a big blow. I know Dallas fans are unhappy that nothing further was done about Nurse, but to be fair, like I said on social media enough times, I don't think that there was any intent from Nurse to injure Hintz. It wasn't like that. Hintz cross-checked him in front of the net. He whacked him back. He got him in almost like the perfect spot for to be an injury. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't a case of, I don't think he had time to really zero in and get him exactly there. He just whacked him. But that's a 2-minute penalty. That happens all the time in the game. It's just an unfortunate outcome. But something that did happen today that I do wonder if player safety will take a look at is Connor Brown had to leave the game in the second period. Got a big hit from Alex Petrovic, and you can see that there was Petrovic's shoulder did get him right in the chin, so it is head contact. Where he didn't come back, I do wonder if it could be concussion related. So we will see if there's anything further on Petrovic. I know Dallas fans are not going to be happy if something is done to Petrovic without having something done to a nurse, but that's just the way it goes. Unfortunately, like, this is a clear headshot, whereas the other one's a penalty, but that's all. And Petrovic wasn't called. The other thing too is the refs have been. You could say that they haven't been the greatest. This game especially had some wonkiness to it. The Oilers should have been called on a penalty in the early part of the game on a puck over glass that was missed. And, of course, they scored their first 2 goals, quick goals, right after. So I know Pete DeBoer was mad, and I don't blame him. That was a bad missed call. And the Oilers certainly took advantage afterwards. Now, as I mentioned, on to some other hockey, lots of other great hockey going on as well. The World Championship Tournament came to a close and got wrapped up here today. And for the first time in 92 years, Team USA brings home gold. It's hard to imagine that Team USA and USA Hockey has been so good between World Juniors, and obviously we saw what they did at the Four Nations and, recent Olympics. And, it's been a long time that they've been a really strong hockey country. For them to be 92 years without getting the World Championship, it's just really, really bizarre. Hard to imagine, but they did it. It was a real tight game, 1-0 overtime win against the Spitz team. Switzerland had a real solid tournament and a real solid game. Tage Thompson gets the golden goal on a 2-on-2 here with Logan Cooley. Thompson had a great tournament as well. So certainly lots of great American players on this team that went over and represented their country. Obviously, Tage Thompson was a big part of it. Clayton Keller was the captain. Logan Cooley, Connor Garland, Zach Werenski, Shane Pinto of Ottawa had a big role. Played a lot with Cutter Gauthier, Will Smith. Jerry Swayman was solid between the pipes as well. Just an overall great effort by the American team. They had a few games early on where they blew some leads, and I was wondering if they had this kind of run in them, but clearly they did. They had a really not so great game against Switzerland earlier in the tournament, but Switzerland walks away with silver, which is still a great tournament for them. Sweden played Denmark for bronze, which was surprising, and they won. So Denmark finishes 4th, which is, I believe, their best ever finish. Denmark got where they were because they shocked Team Canada in the quarterfinals, and with 2 late goals. It was a tight game. It was scoreless through most of it in that game, Denmark and Canada. And then Canada finally gets a 1-0 lead in the third. But then the Danes come back with a late tying goal. And then before you think it's going to overtime, and they stun them again with another a really, really late goal to take a 2-1 win. It was completely shocking. And the Canadian team on paper looked to be as good, if not better, than any roster they've sent in a long time. They had Crosby and McKinnon and, all these top players going over. It was pretty crazy. They had a decent amount from their Four Nation team. Not everybody, of course, but just insane that they lost out as early as they did. Another thing that was very interesting in this tournament, Switzerland became the first team to not allow a single goal in regulation during the playoff rounds. They went through the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the final without allowing a goal at all in regulation. The only one, of course, happened in overtime against the U.S. for the golden goal that Tage Thompson scored. And that's it. That's remarkable and just crazy stat that they've had such a long shutout streak there going. Pretty crazy. The Memorial Cup, of course, going as well right now in Rimouski, Quebec. Certainly some great hockey going on there. We're getting one game every day. The first game was the Medicine Hat Tigers against the Rimouski Oceanic, with Medicine Hat and Gavin McKenna putting on a good show, picking up a 5-4 win. He was just remarkable in that game, scoring the game-winning goal. The second game featured the London Knights, the Ontario champions, against the Quebec champion Moncton Wildcats. That one was a tight game, went to overtime with London picking up a 3-2 win. And then tonight, the London Knights picked up another regulation win, 3-1 over the host Rimouski team. So London has now got 2 wins. Rimouski's got 2 losses. Moncton has an overtime loss, and Medicine Hat has a win. So Moncton plays Medicine Hat tomorrow, which will be a very interesting game. So how this tournament works, unless there's a tie in the standings at all, the top place team will go right to the final, and the second and third place teams will play semifinal for the right to go on to that final as well. The last place team is out. But I say if there is a tie in the standings and it's not a clear-cut semifinal matchup, then there will be a tiebreaker game if necessary. Now, as I mentioned as well, a few other news and notes around the NHL today. Evgeny Kuznetsov, a longtime NHLer, of course, played this past year in the KHL, is now a free agent. He and his Russian club, of course, had terminated the remainder of his contract. And according to details from his agency, he's not ruling out a return to the NHL. Doesn't mean for sure he's going to be pursuing that as a primary preference here, but he's certainly open to it and is really at this point looking for what opportunities are out there between the NHL and the KHL. It's hard to say. He very well could stay in Russia, but he is not opposed to coming back to North America and playing in the NHL again if there's the right opportunity that he feels works well for him and is a good fit. So, of course, we know in his heyday, Kuznetsov was a really productive centerman, but obviously in the later stages of his career, obviously wasn't quite so much. We last saw him as a deadline acquisition for the Hurricanes back 2 seasons ago, and really didn't play a huge role for them. He had a good run through the end of the regular season, didn't do too bad, but then in the playoffs was kind of used as a spare part almost, so to speak. So we'll see. Don't be shocked, basically, if Kuznetsov does potentially reappear in the NHL, or you hear more rumblings about him as a free agent signing this coming off season. Of course, we have all heard lots about Brendan Shanahan lately after being let go as president of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Of course, that rumbling started with him leaving there. And before he was even officially let go, we had confirmation that the New York Islanders had requested permission to speak with him and were granted that, which obviously fueled the speculation he was definitely going to be out. Why would they, allow that if they had any intentions of wanting to keep him? And then, of course, the Islanders and him did have a meeting, but since then they've announced a new GM of Matthew Darche. Now, there was lots of speculation before anything was finalized that the finalist in the GM search was Matthew Darche and Marc Bergevin. People around the league said, well, Shanahan he knows both of those guys, has decent relationships with them, has a connection to John Collins, who's the minority owner representing the ownership here in this search. And he and Shanahan used to work together at the league office as league executives before. So obviously when Shanahan was worked for the director for the NHL and player safety and such. So, there are other connections there. Obviously Shanahan would know Patrick Waugh. At one point they were really fierce rivals as well, but know each other well for sure as well. So, lots of reasons to think there's a good fit there. But after they went ahead and with their announcement of Darche as the GM, once everything was officially released by the team, he was given a title of not only GM but executive vice president. And they made it pretty clear that there will not be any other hires at this time. So Darche will be the top highest ranked executive in hockey operations. So it seems at this point it's pretty unlikely that there's going to be any change there. So it doesn't look like Brendan Shanahan to the New York Islanders is going to be something that happens after all. Now, there's been some chatter about, there's other teams out there where they could use somebody like him as a president with his experience that could be a good fit and that maybe he'll be interested in. One appears to be maybe be the Buffalo Sabres. Now, when he took over the Toronto Maple Leafs as team president, they were in utter chaos, going through a situation where they were going to tear things down and rebuild. The Sabres are not quite in that situation, but they've been under the playoffs for 14 years. Feels like they've been kind of rebuilding forever. He knows what it's like to go through, obviously, that stage of a team building it up. So, the Buffalo media is speculating that the Sabres may be willing to, or open, I should say, to talking with Shanahan for the potential positioner. We know that the Sabres have been rumored to be wanting to add a senior executive with more experience as a president to work above Kevin Adams. And, we know that he's got, now I know it's a little different. I know he does have family connections to the state of New York, but clearly, so a lot of people don't realize just how big New York is, and where Buffalo is located is nowhere really near New York City and all that. So I don't know that it's really a fit from a personal standpoint. But again, to Shanahan, even somebody in that role doesn't always have to be with the team 100% of the time either. They could certainly work remotely and kind of go back and forth. So I don't know if there's a fit there, but certainly expect the Sabres to be potentially coming up as a Shanahan landing spot should he want to jump into another role here right away. Now, some other rumors, except around trades into the offseason. We want to take a look at a couple here. One, there's an article from Daily Faceoff and Matt Larkin looking at some players that were, I guess what players he felt were the most likely and best targets for needing a change of scenery. And one he mentions, and I mentioned this in my video I put out yesterday, if you watch that, some rumors that can happen, rumors for things that can happen around the NHL draft. I mentioned one of the players I thought was, I put him on kind of near the bottom, was I thought it might be less likely because it's such a big contract and a big name that it's probably a little bit less likely we see it. But wondering about Elias Pettersson. I mean, look how things went this past year in Vancouver. Obviously, the JT Miller trade didn't really solve that situation with his performance. We've heard lots about how, things have gone. And it doesn't sound to me like a lot of people in Vancouver really have a ton of confidence that he's going to bounce back. And clearly, getting a fresh start just might be what's best for him. He has a no-move clause kicking in after July 1st as well. So if they're going to make a move and they don't want him to kind of really pigeonhole him into a certain team, then it's the time is now, between now and the draft, before July 1, to make that move. If they're going to do it now while you have that flexibility. And he suggests a swap with the New York Islanders and Matthew Barzal. Now, of course, we just talked about the fact that the Islanders have a brand new GM. Is Darsh going to want to come in hot that quickly and make a big splash? I don't know. I mean, brand new GM, first-time GM. Barzal by many is considered, probably one of your best players. He's signed to a longer-term deal. Has he lived up fully to the potential? Maybe not. Obviously spent a lot of time injured this past year as well. I guess the other connection here is Barzal is a BC boy, so as well, for a player looking to really reach his full potential, does a swap there make sense? And he kind of goes through that possibility that maybe it does. Pettersson can come in. Obviously, Pettersson knows Bo Horvat very well. You could have a Pettersson-Horvat 1-2 punch as your two centermen. If Pettersson can be what he used to be, it's not all bad. So it's an interesting concept. Like I said, Barzal is certainly a whole different type of player. Plays with a lot of speed, a lot of pace. Would they consider something like that? Makes you wonder. I mean, I don't disagree with the fact that I really do think that Pettersson could benefit from a change of scenery. I wouldn't completely rule out the idea that maybe Barzal could benefit from one as well. But he also needs I think a season of being healthy and maybe getting surrounded by some stronger players that just fit better with how he plays. Horvat and him were a pretty good 1-2 combo, but they need, to have a solid line for him to really be productive on would be a good thing. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not really sure you're going to want to see Darsh come in and make such a big move so quickly. And of course, this article was written just a few days ago. I don't think Darsh was completely confirmed yet. At this point, when the article was written, we knew that the Islanders were getting a new leadership, a new GM, but we didn't know 100% who it was going to be. So let me know your thoughts. Is Darsh going to come in and really make a big, bold move like that right off the get-go? Or is that more likely, if something like that would happen, to be later and maybe not so drastic here from the first few weeks here on the job? Let me know your thoughts. And of course, Montreal Gazette article and Pat Hickey writing about the fact that it feels like Marco Rossi could be a great target for Montreal. We know getting a number 2 center is a big priority for Montreal this offseason, and we're probably going to hear a number of names linked to this team that they're looking at and considering over the next number of weeks before they eventually do finally make a move. Rossi's one of a few players. Now, it also mentions, looking at free agency, and I'm not sure that there's much out there in free agency that's going to be a good, real solid target for them. He mentions guys like John Tavares, Matt Duchene. I don't think either of them are going to be available, though, to be honest, and I'm not sure that either would go to Montreal anyway. I'm pretty sure that Tavares will most likely take a discount and stay in Toronto. And if for any reason that relationship and that contract doesn't get done, I think he's more likely to go back to the States than Montreal. That's just my take. I know he's had a lot of battles with the tax man in CRA in Canada, so I'm sure he wouldn't mind heading back to the good old USA, where his signing bonuses are treated a little bit differently. Matt Duchene, on the other hand, I don't know. I mean, could he stay in Dallas? Yeah, that wouldn't be shocking. Does he want to come back to Canada? I mean, really, Duchene's never really played in Canada except for a brief stint in Ottawa. So I don't know that that's really a likely scenario. I mean, I think getting it done via trade probably is more likely. Rossi does make sense. He's a very talented centerman. Discussions for what it might cost. It could end up costing, would you do a straight up trade for one of their top young D, like a Reinbacher or a Mailloux? Maybe. There's a possibility you could do a package. It could include one of your first round picks. They're picking 16 and 17, so maybe you include one of those and a prospect. I think I do wonder if they're willing to part with Owen Beck or not. I mean, I don't think they want to give up on him that quickly, but he didn't have the greatest season. Kirby Dach is another name. Again, would Minnesota want Dach? A lot of injuries. Another young player that's not hitting his full potential, but it's largely due to the fact that he can't stay healthy. So again, Dach back, a first rounder, could it be a straight out for like a Reinbacher? Something along those lines. They have lots of draft capital, lots of prospects. They could build something that would intrigue Minnesota for sure. But if Minnesota's looking for more of a swap to get another kind of player in right off, then it may have to be, probably more of probably a defenseman, because I'm not sure that they're going to be super interested in Dach because of the injuries. And then you throw in Beck, who's, debatable. I'm not sure he's NHL ready right now. Like I said, it didn't seem like he have a great year in Laval, playing pretty low in the lineup during a playoff run. So not really sure there's a great fit there. The other thing I'd be concerned about with Rossi, he's really small. Suzuki's your number one center. I wouldn't say Suzuki's overly small, but he's certainly not big either. He's not that big of a guy. When you get Suzuki and Caulfield on your top line, you do have Slafkovsky, which offers you some size. Demidov is not short, but he's kind of wiry. He's not really a big, strong guy, right? Not a power forward type. So, you got to make sure that you have a good amount of, size, skill, strength, all in that kind of good mix, right? And is Rossi just another small player in a team that already has a lot of that? That might be my concern more than anything else. I wouldn't have the concerns that he could put up some points and be a good productive player, but when it comes to being playoff ready and all that, is it going to really translate? That's the concern there. So let me know your thoughts on all today's news and rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.